Well, hanging around here, he's under the impression that people want the buzz.
It's time for Planet Green.
We've launched.
We've completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform in Michigan.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen, the Planet Green Trees show is underway with your host, attorney Michael Komorn.
We have launched.
Welcome, everybody. Listen to Planet Green Trees. Thanks for joining us. Today's date is October 20th, year 2021. This is episode number 537. Calling it Green is the Color of Her Kind. And our tonight's guests, we've got Harry Barash, Cass Coleman, and Zahra Abass. We're going to be talking about a number of different things, primarily the slaughter on caregivers, which is seemingly the goal and intention of the legislature as the bills have proceeded out of committee to potential vote at the House floor. But we're going to talk about a lot of some other possible topics that we may be discussing, but no guarantees depending on how things go. We have possible Rant. UPS has released final rules. Actually, this is the United States Postal Service released final rules banning the mailing of hemp, CBD, and marijuana vapes. And then, of course, why do states allow legal weed but not home growing? What's up with that?
What is up with that?
Top IRS officials say marijuana banking form would help feds get paid.
Mofos.
Texas judge
Who wrote that headline?
denies order to keep Delta 8 THC products from being considered illegal. A Texas judge.
Yeah, that's good on Texas on that one.
So those are the topics. To help us discuss all these and contribute to the community entertainment, let me introduce our in-studio personnel. We have Tommy, Justin, and Dan, the Bunker Boys. And moving around the room, promising to be very funny tonight and offer tons of entertainment, my good friend Jim Powers.
Good evening, Michael. Good evening, everybody. It is good to be here on this lovely Thursday evening with this delightful dessert tea. I mean, it's really delightful this week, Steve. I can't say that enough. It's very good.
You guys have dessert teas tonight?
We
Yes,
do.
ma'am.
We do. We do.
Oh, man, I could use one. I
Yeah.
could totally use a dessert tea.
We're going to have to ship you one.
Well, I don't know if Michael's going to drink his.
Overnight it.
That's right. That's right. But it's good to be here. Looking forward to the show.
All right, good. Promise to be funny and stuff?
Yeah, I'm going to tell some jokes. Maybe
All right,
I'll
good.
dance a jig. I don't know.
All right, good. And, of course, our really one of a kind, my dear friend and really the rover here at Komorn Law, man of all different types of trades of specialty, and, of course, the catalog of music from the 70s, just outstanding. Please welcome Steve Miller.
Hello. Hello, sir. It's good to be here, and sure we'll have a really good show tonight.
All right. As long as you're promising. And join us
Well, he's the space cowboy. So,
space cowboy.
you know.
And join us from the AMMA, right?
Hey.
The one and only Jay Van Dyke here to pitch and moan about the patients and the caregiver problems.
Yes, sir.
Jay, thanks for being here. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. Good to see you.
And in the Zoom room, we have, of course, a YouTuber in her own right and concierge to the cannabis community. That's good, right? That's not a bad one. Please welcome Amanda Joslin.
Thank you, Michael. It's good to be here as always. We've got some great topics, and I am also looking forward to Jimmy the Peppa being super funny.
All right, good. It's promising.
Super funny.
Super funny.
And I see there he's wearing a hat tonight. Don't let that startle you.
We just got to get the guys to zoom the cameras right around. And yeah, I see the rare or the RX. What is that, Jamie?
Real Leaf.
Real Leaf, which
That's,
just had the article come out.
Had the article come out and was a huge sponsor for CannaJam.
Yeah, that's
Huge,
Tom, right?
huge.
That's
Tom Beller, yeah.
Tom Beller's place. Yeah.
Also,
Just celebrated his 42nd birthday.
nice.
All right, Tom. Good people.
Yeah, I wrote
That emblem has a lot of different like representations built into it, right? We got all the from Pink
Lots
Floyd
of
to
them.
the Jay.
I should get this one in there too. I don't know if you can see it.
Botanical Company.
There
Tawas.
it is. Good.
Okay, so
It's too close not to have to recognize it. With equal
What
time.
else can we plug? What else? You got a wristband on or anything like that?
Oh, I like that. I need one of those, Jamie.
what is that?
Clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, those are actually pretty good.
It's a grinder and it works really well. Yeah, it's like it's a quality grinder on top of being a nice little branding tool for him. He's getting some good products out, working with some good people.
Tonight's show is sponsored by Komorn Law PLC.
Oh boy.
For all your legal issues, 248-357-2550. I don't have an armband. I might as well do
When
that.
you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here
Where did that come from? All right, that's good. Save that for a little while.
That's
I don't know what time our guests are calling. Does anyone have any tracking on that?
I mean, they'll call when they'll call in. You know.
But they
Fine.
call when they call in, but I did discuss somewhere in the 8:30, 8:45 range for Cass and Zahra. Cass was somewhat up in the air, but was likely. I believe Zara's
Okay.
gonna be coming on for sure.
Well, let's. Should we? I mean, we do have some other topics we can talk about. Not that I'm. But I think we should try to frame what's taking place, Jimmy. Just and let's kind of give a. If someone doesn't know what we're talking about, let's back up a little bit and kind of describe some things that are going. There's 3 bills that have been introduced and got
And reported out of committee.
had a committee meeting.
Yeah, there's 5 now that are tie barred. The other ones that have been added on have to do with some taxes, things like that, and the original 3, which includes which is 5300 to 5302, 5301 primary to me, or should be to most of us. It's the actual act, the amendments in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act.
5301 is the one that does let's see,
Yes.
because
It's
actually
the amendments text. And yep.
It's not.
And there was a
good.
substitute put in, and the substitute was equally as bad as the original language. Some people thought it was an appeasement of some kind, but it was just more smoke and mirrors. They continue not to get it and not be too worried about trying to figure it out, apparently. So,
right.
That was a pretty shitty compromise they offered. I mean,
yeah. How about we make it equally as shitty? Does that satisfy you? Would you take equally as shitty?
oh fuck.
Great negotiator.
So the 5301 amends the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. 5302 amends the Marijuana Tracking Act, and then 5300 amends the Michigan Marijuana Facility Licensing Act.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're.
And I've been speaking with. I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say they're tie barred, so that means they all 3 of them have to pass or they all fail.
Yeah, and there's actually 5 now that are tie barred. There's 1 that's independent.
So, but I mean,
I've been speaking with a lot of reps, with just getting some of my own meetings and speaking along with some other advocacy organizations. And there's just a ton of misinformation. There's obviously sensationalism and fabricated hysteria. There's a lot of these people that just don't have historical perspective on this issue. We haven't had to go there en masse like this and try to lobby and get all these meetings. And we used to have to do this during the Walsh bills and when the MMFLA was coming around and that type of stuff. So it's really it's unsettling that we have to do this again. We're probably up against our most formidable challenge, spending the most money. They're the most seasoned at it now. This is the second big money interest group that Linder has been lobbying for. And they're pulling out all the stops. That said, I really do think that we have the benefit of being the most cohesive as a group of activists and advocates, professionals that are in opposition to these bills, and we're proving to be a stumbling block for them also, particularly since the actual largest industry association, the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, of over 300 plus members, not the 10 or 12 of the MCMA that's driving this, is actively in opposition. But one of the things we found out while talking to many of the reps is that Steve Linder and company would infer kind of that the MICIA was in favor, making it seem like the whole industry, was in support, which is a very strong position for the lawmakers. So, and there's lots of things like that. There's like, they have 72 plants. They don't need 72 plants. That kind of stuff is going on too. It's got to be tested. This is medicine, that kind of shit. And people who don't know anything about it, don't have any reference, they can fall right into that. And listening to people talk about it all the time.
This is just a good example of there's nothing wrong with it. Just leave it the fuck alone. Like everybody that is getting into the business is making money, it seems. Like life is good. People are, caregivers are doing their thing. Like, leave it the fuck alone.
They can't.
Nope.
They can't. So, and there's discussion that I heard at a meeting last night, and I've heard it referred to before, and maybe it's true, and maybe it makes some sense that, there are the big players, Wall Street type size people evaluating this stuff and want to get into the Michigan market, but they're aware of this, what they call the caregiver problem.
The caregiver problem.
Yeah, and that's got to get resolved here. Like it's not a real big challenge to the commercial industry, but it's perceived as being this.
It wasn't a problem when all those
stumbling block to like all the money that could be made or something. It's really ridiculous. It's naive and it's ignorant and everything, but it's a real thing, man. There's a lot of force behind it.
These businesses were just buying caregiver marijuana. How many months ago?
And there was with no testing mandates, right, and with no problem. And the same people that were overseeing that program are now coming going, oh my God, I can't believe that this stuff's so floating around.
And maybe some of it right now is kind of fueled by the the controversy between the two groups, and they piss each other off. And so these guys are like, okay, you want to play? Let's play. Let's play hardball, the MCMA guys, I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of that in there too. Little ego at play.
So here you go. Just for context and foundation, I'm reading from the legislative analysis. When they usually introduce a bill, they will
analyze it.
By the House Fiscal Agency, which purports to do it in an objective way. They don't really give a opinion one way or the other, but they identify the pros and cons, and it's based upon the people who have submitted stuff. So it's fair to say that as all the bills were introduced, they did not speak with any organization, that represented the persons and individuals whose rights they're directly.
And that's appealing to the lawmakers when we say, so far this has been just the MCMA and Steve Linder writing this language. We know patients and caregivers who would be directly affected. The other industry association, advocacy groups, that have not been at the table at all. And some of these questions are important and we should discuss them, but it shouldn't be too much to ask that that be done by way of a fair process where the important stakeholders are there offering meaningful input. And a lot of the lawmakers are hip to that concept.
You would think so. That would be compelling because you'd hate to think that special interest groups with a lot of money would be dictating the way the politics and legislation would be made. You'd hate to think that that'd be a way of the world and whatnot. And you'd think that anyone that, that when you say that to them and they realize that that's what's happening, that would mobilize them to lock in a position contrary to that and allowing that to happen. But, unfortunately,
for those that haven't been, influenced in one way or another by the resourceful lobbying organization, are given some perspective, and it does help out. But unfortunately, as you're kind of like pointing out indirectly, we are fighting to have enough no votes to stop this bill from going through that requires a supermajority or 75% of the vote of the House and the Senate. And we are like, having I would say it's a challenge to maintain that, to hold on to enough votes to not allow this to pass. So they are very effective in spite of my simple solution of just telling them, this should be fair. I understand, but that does offer perspective to people that don't understand that's how it's gone down. There are people that believe that there have been input from caregivers and patients and from other industry in support of this, and they've been bullshitted.
Oh yeah, I'm sure the caregivers are out there saying, "Please take away my plant count."
Well, I mean, right. I think the idea that
There's a lot of people that don't have perspective. I'm sorry, they don't have like any kind of like experience discussing this issue and looking into what the laws do and stuff like that. It's a whole new batch of lawmakers in there since we've had to go there and have these discussions. Go ahead.
I agree, and I should say at the get-go that I have of all of the branches of government, I have the least amount of faith in the legislature. They're the least governed. There's no oath that they take to uphold in the context of morality or objectivity or a set of canons that dictate their profession. If you ever get a legislature that you could do a deposition with or ask them questions, you can't ask them the question of why did you vote that way. Just so you know, like
Right.
there's no, it's not they voted. That's it. You can. That's like not any. It's a protected. It's interesting. It's a protected area. But just reading the proposals here begs the question: like, why are you doing this? What is the motivation for doing this? And you're right, Jamie. It's a special interest group that's doing it, and they may want to stay away from that. And I realize that appeal is one that exposes the evils of legislating. That this is a thing that goes on, and it may, cause a legislator not to vote that way just because of the appearance or association with it. But unfortunately, I think it happens all the time at the end of the day. And I think what you're seeing here is this lack of education and knowledge amongst these legislators makes it more difficult for them to go alone. Even there's a herding mentality, I think, which is the other problem that we have. They are all new. They're all not necessarily educated. Getting through to them at all on these topics is difficult. You have to move them a long way if it's if they're already gone. And I would say this: unfortunately, I think there's been really good propaganda as it goes of the caregiver quote unquote problem. I mean, I think it is a discussion that has gotten to the point where it's just described as something that exists and it's being called caregiver problem, even though it's not really caregivers, it's somebody else. And the naming of this and the identifying of it has been a great propaganda campaign. It's literally identifying people that are not to blame, right? And calling them that for the purposes of a reason that's not justified. But let me just discuss. So there's this bill. This analysis discusses. Okay, so House Bill 5300 to 5302 would amend different acts that regulate the medical marijuana market. This is just for medical marijuana, just so we're clear. Among other things, the bills would do all of the following: regulate licensed specialty medical growers. This has been the carrot and the stick, suggesting that there's a path to commercial success, commercial involvement in the medical market by the carrot and stick approach of to regulate these licenses called specialty medical growers. Require the statewide monitoring that tracks medical marijuana sales and transfers between licensees and registered primary caregivers and registered qualifying patients to track certain information pertaining to licensed specialty medical growers. So the concept is that in some area, in exchange for being able to do any of this behavior as you have been as a caregiver at your house, if you're in an industrial zone and the city approves it, subject to inspections, you can grow your 72 plants and sell your overages to a medical cultivator,
Right.
not into the rec market. This is
That's
just
right.
medical.
Into the market that's shrinking significantly.
It would prohibit transfers of marijuana from licensed specialty medical marijuana grower to a licensee in the recreational market. So don't even think about that. Prohibit licensed growers, processors, cure transfers, or safety compliance facility licensees from also being licensed as a licensed specialty medical grower. Reduce from 5 to 1 the number of registered qualified patients a registered primary caregiver may assist. Now, this was before the amendments.
Yep.
And right now,
It's back up to 5.
it's back up to 5, but a total plan of 24 for 5. Right. What happens if you have 3?
3 plants?
No, if you have 3 patients.
I don't know. Then you still get 24 plants, I guess.
You just get 24, don't you, Jamie?
Max out at 24, and you can still have up to your 5 patients, which is the substitute from having to reduce caregiver to.
But the 24. If you have one patient, you get 24 plants, or do you have to have 5 to get 24 plants?
No,
I haven't
I
seen
think-
the substitute.
I think it's 12 and 12, isn't it? Or am I-
I
You
think
know what?
it's
You're
12 and
right.
12.
You're right. I mean, like I actually I don't know if they break it down. I to like 4 plants a piece or whatever that it would work out.
Right.
You know.
I haven't seen the substitute, but I understand the idea was instead of because what it originally talks about here is you could theoretically have your 12 as a patient, and then you could be a caregiver for one other patient with a total of 24.
Right.
This may be a situation where it's 36, maybe.
Yeah, well, it might be because then you could have 2 patients, or
I'll
I
tell
mean,
you what,
whatever. You
we're
have
gonna-
24 plants for up to the 5 patients, and then 12 for yourself.
We're gonna try to
I
take-
believe that makes sense.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
just going to get up the
try and take a little looky
yeah,
here.
instead of speculating. But I'm just
No, my speculation was exactly correct, and that's all I need to do.
Here you go. Eliminate provisions barring a registered qualified patient from transferring marijuana or marijuana-infused products to any individual and selling marijuana to someone, listen to this, who is not a registered qualifying patient, ready for this? Felony offense. This is insane. In the context of
Can you read that again,
your
please?
recreational law being passed to eliminate arresting people for marijuana, they are felonizing patients and caregivers.
Yeah.
This is the most brutal fucking shit. I'll read it to you again. Eliminate provisions barring a registered qualifying patient from transferring marijuana or marijuana-infused products to any individual because there's a Section 4 that allows a transfer.
Right.
Wait a second, that's interesting. That's a no. Yeah, there's an interesting part in the it may be by error about what patients can't transfer and what caregivers can transfer in Section 4.0, I think it is. To any individual and selling marijuana to someone who is not a registered qualifying patient a felony offense. Now, there does exist a 2-year misdemeanor in the MMA, which means that they already had a misdemeanor in the MMA, and if someone was selling marijuana as a caregiver, for example, to someone that was not a patient, they could charge them with a 2-year misdemeanor.
So it's 36. So what?
Yeah, I thought it was a felony, actually.
No. Well, they charge people under the public health code, but the MRTMA, the delivery with remuneration, may result in something else. They're not like I don't know anyone that's ever been charged with the crime of a violation.
The intent is to fall back onto the code and make it a felony.
But this is amending the MMMA. Listen to me.
I know. But you just brought up the MRTMA. That's all right. Yeah.
Right. The MRTMA trumps all other laws that conflict with it and is the prevailing law. What they're doing here is insane. They are increasing a penalty for a person that's acting under the auspices of the MMMA fraudulently and maybe selling to someone that's not, that's not a patient. That law already existed in the MMA. They've never used it. They never charge anyone with a violation of the MMA for doing an MMA violation. They charge them with a penalty in the public health code. But the idea that they're focused on enhancing that from it already exists as a 2-year misdemeanor. I mean, it actually begs the question, you don't need to do all of this. You have crimes that you could charge people with now, right?
Right.
All right. So here you go, House
They
Bill.
want to keep that felony on marijuana.
They're creating how do they create a felony when the voters have spoken already? They're not amending MRTMA. That's problematic. Like, I think they would have to amend MRTMA to say, despite the vote for the recreational law, we want to felonize. I mean, doesn't this law now completely conflict with, maybe that's what they're trying to do. Trying to create a conflict between the MMA and the recreational law. Recreational law wins, and then the MMA is gone. Think they're doing that, Jamie? That's an interesting... Bill 205320 would revise the citation, the Public Health Code. The Public Health Code is dead, by the way. They've dug it out of the grave, and they're giving it mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and there's worms crawling out of eyes. They got to amend the Public Health Code to account for changes made to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act by House Bill 5301. House Bill 5319 and 21 would respectfully amend the use tax and general sales tax to exempt the sale of marijuana by registered primary caregivers or licensed specialty marijuana growers. So, all right. Now, hold on. Yeah, they're going to lift the felony restrictions on, like you wouldn't be able to become a medical license if you had a felony within 10 years. So they're lifting that so people can participate in the medical, you know, for the specialty licensed growers. Hold on.
So then they can catch you selling to somebody outside of your patient network and charge you with a felony.
Felony.
What's going on?
The bill would eliminate a prohibition on a patient transferring marijuana or marijuana-infused product to any individual. Is that something that's specifically allowed right now?
Well, did they allow patient-to-patient transfer
No.
under the MMA?
No. McQueen. I mean, I do think there's section 4O or N that describes this, but I think it's the caregiver who actually is the language that it protects or empowers. Well, I want to say the parent of a patient who is a minor could serve as a minor's patient caregiver or licensed specialty medical grower, or could approve a caregiver or licensed specialty medical caregiver. Gee, I wonder why they're doing that.
Is there an age on there?
No.
So
It can be any parent then that can provide for the child?
it's another carrot.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's the language of the amendments says that it basically it's very specific, and it says for the before 100 days after the effective date of the mandatory or a mandatory act. So after they pass this, whenever it becomes effective, the clock starts ticking.
What is it? How many days?
180 days.
6 months to clear it up.
So
Okay.
before that time, everything stays the same. After that time, it's after 180 days, the caregiver can possess a combined total of 2.5 ounces of marijuana in usable marijuana equivalents and 12 marijuana plants. So it's
What's that again?
It's still 24 if they're a patient. So that doesn't give them any additional plant count as a result of.
It's not
additional
36.
patients.
It's 24
No, it's 24.
total. No one will ever.
And that's only if the caregiver's a patient. If the caregiver's just a caregiver, they're allowed 12.
But the supplement is not.
I'm
24?
looking at the amendment.
All right.
It's on our,
It's just so you can keep the 5 patients instead of have to choose one.
Yep.
But the plant count doesn't increase.
right.
I mean, the 36 is still stupid, but at least it was 12 more, you know.
There's a lot of problems in the world. They're worried about this plant. I mean,
They don't have anything better to do.
you know, we don't know what to do about all these other problems going on.
Here you go. I like this one. Here's a fun fun.
So we'll just default to the plants.
Here's a fun sentence to read. A licensed specialty medical grower's license, which is the sell, come on, caregivers, come do this, come get one of these. Those that obtain this could have your license suspended without notice or a hearing.
Isn't that nice?
In other words, sign up, get no due process if the safety and health of the patients or members of the public were jeopardized by the license continued operation.
Without notice. Why would we want to give up our right to notice?
How about this one? Ready for this one? This is why this is some crazy shit. The MRA could disclose to the Department of State Police or local law enforcement agencies the address of the location where a caregiver or licensed specialty medical grower cultivates or manufactures marijuana. In other words, this information is no longer privileged, that it will be given upon request as a matter of course, that may include law enforcement agencies or people pretending to be, or even the dissemination of that information for whatever reasons, right? And this is dangerous. It's dangerous to have a person's location known. And I'm not saying dangerous concerning,
It's none of their damn business.
concerning a raid, but the information makes it a public safety, potentially, like, it's important that people not know that you're growing, because I think it creates issues for potential, and if there has been any of those, it's too many, where people are raiding, robbing and things like that. But the only thing that may have controlled that could control it, is the fact that the information's privileged, right? And if you have multiple, locations that are now disclosed to the police, first of all, not just that for ripping, but also it now allows the cities to identify who's growing in what neighborhoods and start, creating all kinds of.
Nothing good will come of it.
Nothing good will come of it. And I'm not saying that they would be able to. I'm not saying they'd be allowed to. I'm not saying that any of this would be valid, but I do think one of the major
they'll be raiding.
rebuttals of the idea that any of the cities or villages can amend can create some kind of restrictions on caregiving is partially because they don't know what's going on in the house, right? And they don't know that place is designated for a certain number of plants.
Well, and it opens up, you've got folks that aren't living in houses that aren't hurting anything, and frankly, in a lot of neighborhoods are buying up vacant houses and improving on them, and there isn't a problem, and they're going to make it a problem. And that's
what government does best. They make problems for the people. Government does more harm than good.
We had a caregiver in yesterday that had his caregiver address on the back of his driver's license. So they've already begun to do this.
Say that again?
They put his caregiver address on the back of his driver's license.
Who did? Where did that come from?
State.
How'd they get it on the back of his driver's license?
That's just what they did.
He got.
Isn't that a violation of Section 6? Like the privacy
There's
issues that are...
There's not been an amendment yet that does that with an ID. Did they put a sticker on it?
Yes.
A sticker. It wasn't printed, sent in some method. Okay, that's different. Who would have done that?
The police officer could still see that.
Well, he can take the sticker off, right?
Well,
who put the sticker on?
State.
When he got his license?
Yeah.
No.
So the front of the license is a different address. The back of the license is what he uses for his caregiver address. There are different addresses.
Yes.
That's not a requirement. And
I know.
And any sticker that someone puts on your.
Well, they'll do that.
When I was reading the amendments to this 5300 and 5301,
it hasn't passed yet. It's just out of committee.
I'm just saying that when I read it, it sounded to me, the entire thing, like it's business against the medical marijuana community. And that's what I was so insistent about, because we represent a lot of patients that don't have the money, that are sick, that are old, have cancer and other types of debilitating illnesses that prohibit them from even earning money. And this is the law that they're trying to take away from these type of people.
Yeah.
It's a shame. Shame. But anyway,
It really is, and it's
terrible.
about money.
It is about money.
And they try and push the whole safety of the kids bullshit. And I think it's obvious. Cat's out of the bag. Marijuana has not harmed anyone.
No, it's never killed anyone, and the whole thing is just
20 years
ludicrous.
of police work. Over 20 years of police work. Not one serious problem did I encounter that revolved around marijuana. And the only calls we went to concerning marijuana were smell of marijuana. We smell marijuana in the area. Oh, we saw these kids walking down the street smoking marijuana. Never. I mean, there was no crimes of violence associated with marijuana. No problems with children in marijuana. It's a ruse. It's bullshit. And every time I hear it, it makes me want to vomit because I didn't encounter it. And I worked in a, western suburb of Detroit, Canton Township, that has the population at the time was 85,000 or so. And I saw pretty much every type of crime you could possibly see. And nothing about the marijuana other than having marijuana.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I never arrested anybody for driving solely under the influence of marijuana. So this safety bullshit they cry is just that.
When I was a kid,
Fabricated hysteria.
the police, if they pulled you over and they smelled marijuana, they weren't arresting you for OWI. They were going to search your car.
Yeah.
And then if they didn't find anything, they were going to cuss you out, and you were going to be on your way.
That's it.
Listen,
You are correct, Jim. Or if you had something, you're going to be arrested for the marijuana.
Yep.
I mean, I did pull people over. I did smell marijuana. I did find the marijuana in the car, arrested them for the marijuana, not something I'm proud of. But I never arrested them for driving under the influence of marijuana. But now that's the new game for some officers.
Listen,
they smell it, and boom, you're in behind that driver's seat. They're gonna take you.
Because the possession is not a crime anymore. Listen,
That's right.
here's the penalties and sanctions sections that amend the MMA. So the whole idea is they're trying to penalize patients and caregivers. Currently, a patient or caregiver who sells marijuana to someone who is not allowed the medical use of marijuana under the Act must have his or her patient registry card revoked, and is guilty of a felony
Revoked.
by punishment up to 2 years or a fine of $2,000 or both, in addition to any other penalties for the distribution of marijuana. Raising that from
2-year felony?
That's what they would raise it to.
And it was a 2-year misdemeanor?
Right. The bill would eliminate the criminal penalty and instead provide that a patient or caregiver who sells or transfers marijuana to a person not authorized to obtain marijuana under the Act must have his or her registry card revoked by the MRA. Okay. So that's interesting. The currently a patient or caregiver violates the Act is responsible for a civil fine of up to $250. The bill would also apply this penalty to licensed specialty growers. Finally, the MRA, local law enforcement, Department of State Police could confiscate or destroy any marijuana or equipment used to cultivate or manufacture marijuana by a licensed grower in violation of the Act, Department rules, tracking, or if the grower ceased to meet certain requirements for license, MRA could suspend, revoke, or deny the application, blah, 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 blah. Now, Ty Bar, I know our guests are, I just want to get these other things out so when they come up, we can... Significant revenue expenditure implication for the marijuana regulatory agency within the Department of Affairs. The bill would expand the scope of the agency's regulatory activities by necessitating the regulation of licensed specialty medical growers and authorized individuals as defined in the bills. These activities would include processing application, other materials, monitoring, compliance, disciplinary actions, etc. The bill would provide a $500 fee and... Okay. In addition, it would have an indeterminate fiscal impact on the courts and on state and local correctional systems. Depending on the number of individuals that would no longer be charged with a felony under the bill could result in a decrease in costs for the state and for local units of government. Reduced felony charges could result in reduced costs related to state prisoners, state probation. In fiscal year 2020, the average cost of prison incarceration in the state was roughly $42,000 per prisoner.
Boom. That's why they want it to be legal, Steve. Every hit they get 42 grand.
So what I think. So I want to draw a distinction. I think they make it felony to sell from a caregiver to someone who doesn't have a license.
It's
but,
awful.
But the violations of this act apparently are, the MMA now, they have violations that would seem to suggest that there's it's a civil infraction, $250 civil infraction.
Where's the felony at?
That's for the selling to someone who is not
a patient of yours?
or a patient at all.
So riddle me this. Why wouldn't someone that was in that position just say that their behavior fell under MRTMA?
Exactly. Right?
What, the sale?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They want people just to think that and to give up on just getting your license. This is the same thing I got under MRTMA anyway. Why take the extra bullshit steps? Just,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
Well,
that's true. That's a good perspective. I didn't even think about that.
I don't know if selling and receiving remuneration has been an act that has been found to be punishable in MRTMA.
Right. I mean, I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but
You sure that we'll get some precedent on it? I agree.
A lot of the, of course, the reps don't know anything about McQueen, and that the Supreme Court said, of course, like in terms of to your connected patients, you can sell it to them. They say stuff in these meetings like you can't sell. They can't sell it. So how do they make any money? How do they come up with the $50,000 it takes to start a garden? There's a lot of misinformation flying around out there. But if I may, we are now joined by Zahra Abass, and she and I have been involved with now in the last week and a half or so. I don't even know how many meetings with lawmakers, and I want to point out that I tried to get some meetings. I got a few, and I got a few under reaching out as the advocacy organizations I'm with, a couple different ones, ASA and the Cannabis Caucus. But it was when Zahra started reaching out and requesting meetings that we started making lots of appointments. And I don't know how many we've been doing, but we've got a lot more to go, and starting tomorrow and into next week too.
All right.
And,
all right. So Zahra, first of all, thank you for joining us. I'm sorry to keep you waiting.
I think we should probably take a break.
All right.
We're having a bit of a technical issue.
Oh, we're going to take a break.
Zoom.
It's going to be all about Zahra when we come back. Thank you for your patience.
Justin!
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective. Take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Remembering Every day the paper boy brings more. You raise the blade, you make the change, you rearrange me till I'm sane. You knock the door and throw away the key, but there's someone in my head, but it's not me.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need. So I think it's important that we all speak up on what we think about this initiative. But when the voters have their say, their will must stand.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
All right, we're back. Thanks for staying with us. Episode number 537. Did you hear what the legislator said to the caregiver? Just tell your patient to get better. Anyways, all right, we are joined by Zahra Abass. And of course, Zahra, what is the official title? Is it Princess Queen of the Cannabis Caucus? I know you have some special anointment position, but I know you're actively involved in that, and I'm interested to hear how political this is from your perspective. Obviously, the Democratic Party must know that many of the successes that they have, both at the governor and the Attorney General, Secretary of State, I mean, probably like a lot, were because of the cannabis community, not the industry itself, but the cannabis community that came out in droves and caused much of the success of the last election. Now, with that being said, Zahra, what is your perspective on the response of the legislators that you've tried to interact with?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me on today. So it's chair of the Cannabis Caucus of the Michigan Democratic Party. Yeah, you're right about that. Like a lot of the ones who got elected or are in office were because of the activists in the cannabis and criminal justice community that helped them get there. I think there is a lot from like our conversation with a lot of the legislators is that there's a lot that really did not know how these bills would affect anything or what they would do. And that's kind of been our purpose in educating them and like letting them know what harms this legislation would cause, because a lot of them are unaware. Because I think like with the legislator, it still said that, okay, yeah, a person can grow, but they didn't like realize how cutting off so much. Initially, at first, it was just down to one patient. So how many patients would be left without access? And then now, them trying to make it better for us by saying that, okay, you can still have your 5 patients, but this is what it's reduced to. So I think that like they don't know how cannabis grows and how long it takes and the process and everything, and that's kind of what some of them's decisions on these bills has been because of the misinformation or not being informed enough about it.
Well, that is a shame to hear. I mean, I think it's obvious, and I think we all knew that. I think the people that are in the legislature now are, obviously not the same faces we've seen over the years. Maybe even, arguably moved and got support for medical marijuana. And I think we would all agree it's like we're almost back in 2009, 10, 11, dealing with Bill Schuette and the dangers of the whole messaging is that the more you got to make it dangerous in order to want to regulate it. But Jamie said something before about, and it was almost like a success in the sense that you got meetings with legislators, right? So, and I don't know how many that is, Jamie, and I don't know if parties associated with it or not. But Zahra, I'm very interested to hear, as the executive director of the Cannabis Caucus, when you call upon Democratic party members, and you want to educate them without telling them how stupid they are, that they have no idea what the issue is. Are they opening the door for you and welcoming you? Is it? I mean, if there's, I don't know what's the number of Democratic representatives or in the House. If it's 100 or what is it? I don't know. What's
it's 110.
110. Okay. I mean, are they all say, yeah, sure, Cannabis Caucus, powerful caucus in the for the Democratic Party, and we want their support, and we have to appease them because they're a huge chunk, and they'll go get. I mean, is it happening like that? Do you have that kind of authority and power? Is cannabis that powerful within the party right now?
I mean, I think the way I do it is initially I was doing it like the emails as the vice chair of the caucus, and then once I got elected to chair, I started like letting them know that I'm reaching out to you as chair of the Cannabis Caucus. That's within the party, so that's what I'm using to email the Democrats. For the Republicans, I'm using my title as in Michigan Normal.
Okay.
The Secretary of Michigan Normal, so that we can have that, so that we can let them see that there is bipartisan opposition to these bills as well, and not just the Democrats.
I understand that, but before we get to the, I'm asking, because obviously, we agree that there's activism and it may change, and they may believe that supporting the quote unquote industry players or going along with this power play in some way is going to empower them for the next election. They may think that, and that may be how they justify it. But is there at least a recognition? Usually there'll be at least a little recognition that even if they're going to vote against you because you were the cause of them getting elected, they'll at least hear you out. And I guess my question is your status as a executive director of a caucus that is asking to speak so they can educate you and see what your position is, so you can report back to your caucus. It's a different layer of if I call or even as a on behalf of a nonprofit organization, if I was calling on behalf of the MMA, I'm still not within it's not a Democratic Party. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying there's that other affiliation. I'm very interested to hear how you have been received in that regard. Are they acknowledging this concept of, we voted you in, you need to at least listen to us? Or is it not a lot of callbacks and a lot of non-returned emails?
No, as requesting emails as chair of the caucus, I have been getting a lot of responses. I don't know if it's because of that or being a DNC delegate, but I think I have no idea why I've been getting the responses back, but emailing them as chair of the caucus has gotten us a good amount of meetings.
All right. Well, so what is it? What's the count so far? There's 110 in the House, and we need 28, Jamie says, I think, right, in order to cut that.
I think minimum, obviously, more
Right.
the merrier.
So is there a count that we know? Do we say, listen?
Have we done a whip?
Yeah, is there a whip? Do we know what the
So I haven't updated it in the past couple days, but so far I think we have 11 upcoming meetings, and we've had I think about 14 or 15, Jamie, with the Democratic representatives. I think it's around that much. So if we finish with all the meetings, we'd have over 26 meetings with the different representatives. And so far, I mean, most of them, their responses have been good when we meet with them. But I think it's around that number from the ones that we've gotten, from the ones I've gotten an email back from.
And I'd say that's not just picking on that group of like beyond the 11, let's say, that they're responsive to you, but they really, it's more likely than not that they're not in a position to take a position. Like the question should be, why should we enact any legislation? What's the reason for it? You know what I mean? It shouldn't be the default is, well, okay, here come some guys that paid some money and introduced some bills and let's just get it passed.
Yeah!
And then to call and try to talk and educate them, and they're already committed on a position where they are not educated. This goes across the board.
We say that to them. This starts off with there being no reason to change anything in the first place, and just this fabricated hysteria.
Zahra, what are you hearing? Like, what is the response of those? I mean, I don't know. Have you been in some meetings? Can you share a little bit of the? You don't have to name names if you don't want to, but I'm just kind of.
Let's name some names.
I'm curious about the discussion. Like, what is the dialogue? Like, what are the topics? Oh, there's all these caregivers that are selling to Ohio and Indiana. They're not saying that, or are they? And those aren't caregivers.
No, I mean, some of them just did not know what exactly the legislation would do, because since it wasn't on the House floor yet, they hadn't really explored it or really given it much time. Like, they hadn't really looked at what exactly it does. But for some of them, I think, during Jamie and my meetings, is we let them know the need for the 12 plants, because a lot of them don't know why is it that a patient needs 12 plants. And the fact that not all your plants are going to be growing or being harvested at the same time to make that oil, and that some people really do depend on a higher level or higher quantity of medicine than others. You can't make it the same as one person requires this, that means the other patient is going to require that. So that's some of the stuff we're bringing up with them. The other thing that we are bringing up to them is that this legislation is saying that there's been issues with cannabis and the cannabis being grown, but really there hasn't been. I mean, the only real issues has been with in the past few years with some of the dispensary stuff, but nothing from the caregivers. It's been a great program for a long time, and there has been no health risks or anything from it. But that's what they hear from from the ones who are doing these bills, is that this is what it causes. So we are informing them that there has been no health risks. There has been nobody getting sick from this. This is especially for people with low incomes to be able to afford the medication. This is especially important. And this is one thing that we are bringing up with them, because they don't realize that, is that this would put a lot of pediatric patients at risk, because a lot of them need specialized things grown for them, especially with epilepsy and cancer, to either they need specific strains or specific ratios that they're not going to find, especially at the quantity that they need in dispensaries.
You raise a lot of points. I think, first of all, the something that jumps out is that whatever the messaging is does not address caregivers. When you say caregivers, there's a certain behavior that's associated, and to suggest that caregiver defined as behavior that's nefarious or something that would rally someone to vote about, that's a non-starter. They're calling it the wrong thing. It's a mislabeling. That's number one. Number two is the MMFLA, if I may add to something you're talking about. The MMFLA was never designed for the end user's concerns. It's highly regulated, costs a lot of money to get going, and the pricing at the stores are not When there was more patients and before recreational, it was not, necessarily doable. And it was certainly more than what the caregiver market would supply, unequivocally. Now, the idea that this organization, whose executive director used to be the head of the LARA and then MRA.
She was the one who was allowing the caregivers to sell the marijuana to the dispensaries.
Well, first, let's just start with that never was there a concern for one patient ever about any of these things for the caregiver program that kept the supply chain for 12 years. That's number one. Number two, when the MMFLA was going to fall apart, there was going to be a state emergency, the caregivers provided that. No issues. Identify the concerns.
It wasn't a problem.
It's a non-health issue. It is a false starter, and it's offensive because it would mean that she has signed off on, she being the executive director and the former LARA MRA executive director now for the MCMA, would mean that she has participated in the very behavior that she says is so atrocious, okay? And there would be no evidence to back any of that. That's the other thing. Further, this idea, which is being missed, and I was trying to talk about it maybe last week, but it comes from the Hartwick-Tuttle Michigan Supreme Court case. This is important because you kind of see this carved out specialty, not a specialty grower's license, but a specialty human being who's a caregiver. And what they talk about in there is that as they're overruling the Court of Appeals, this is the Supreme Court, and they say a certification is not like a prescription. It is not like a prescription that a doctor would write. It is merely, and they describe it what it is, and they actually, this has been resolved before in a case in California that's escaping me for the moment. Anyways, it was the one where the DEA tried to enjoin the physicians from writing recommendations for their patients
First Amendment.
and try to take their DEA license at the same time. And the Ninth Circuit said, or the Ninth or Eighth Circuit said that this is a First Amendment right, and you're allowed to recommend. That's all they're doing. It's not a script. So the Supreme Court got it right.
Yep, they sure did.
And they said that's not a script. And in doing so, they identified this unique situation that the caregiver is in, even though they're not doctors. They're ultimately engaged in the medical use of marijuana, and, charged with the following: providing medical assistance, which includes the medical use. It involves acquiring for them. It involves dosing, frequency of use, and methods of ingestion. These are things that would normally come from a doctor, but they put this onto the caregiver. Now, what I'm saying to you is that there may be places that market to patients as the market splits from 20% patients to 80% recreational. That's what the market is bearing right now. But as it gets less and less and fewer patients, it's unlikely that the stores are going to have supplies for patients with the patients in mind. It's going to be their recreational. If you've got a card, maybe we'll give you a discount or something like that. But it's not going to be a designed for specific patients. And if there's no caregivers, they're saying you just have to buy our medical cannabis at our store, which isn't even medical anymore. It's in the rec section. And it eliminates the whole idea of this one-on-one contact and the unique characteristics of a caregiver, which is what about the person that has no idea where to go or where to start? We've all lived through that. A patient, hey, you get a call from a friend of yours and their mother or relative is ill, and, they want to try, is there any, this is before, is there anyone you can put us in touch with, a caregiver, and because they don't know where to go or what to do, and they need someone to guide them and hold their hand, and the pricing and the necessity of frequency of use may not always be affordable to a lot of people, especially the more ill. And this is what we've talked about. Yeah. The need for Simpson oil in high doses, 2, 3, 4 grams a day is undoable.
Right.
Undoable at any place. But the caregivers have been supplying people and taking great pride in it, and have actually have evidence of successes all throughout the state.
But this bill would also eliminate the ability to make that very product.
Yeah, that's right. And unfortunately, we do have to take a break. Dan actually came in because he's so upset. So we got to go before he gets madder. You're listening to Planet Green Trees.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective. Take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knock out victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
Hey folks, this is Amanda Joslin with the Amanda Report, sponsored by Komorn Law, aired on Planet Green Trees TV. We're here in East Tawas, and man is it beautiful weather, but a little windy, and we're about to do a review on the Botanical Company. I'm here with Danielle, and we're at the Botanical Company in East Tawas. Tell us a little bit about your location here.
So we are in Northeast Michigan in the beautiful town of East Tawas. We opened in October of 2019 with our medical license, and then February of 2020 we got our recreational license. We have been warmly welcomed by this community, so we're so excited to be here. And obviously, you can always find us on Weed Maps and Leafly with any location information.
Very nice. Okay. All right. So let's hear about some of the products that you carry here at the Botanical Company.
Definitely, flower is a fan favorite here, so we want to make sure that our flower selection is very strong. And then obviously, we're always listening to our guests and making sure that any new products coming online, we're getting them in as soon as possible and they're available for sure.
Tell me about another thing that may make Botanical Company a little unique.
I would say it's our aggressive loyalty program. Tawas is a fantastic tourist town through the summer months, but we know once those tourists leave, we have to make sure that we're doing right by our local demographic. So we wanted to make sure that our loyalty program was aggressive for them, so they were coming back and spending their hard-earned bucks and getting the best bang for their buck.
Very nice. Okay, so tell us about how somebody would get started here. I understand you have both adult use and medical use. So what would somebody that's looking to sign up, what would they need to have?
On the medical side, you just need your valid NMJ card and a valid driver's license or state ID. And then on the recreational side, you just need a valid ID. And then really we want to make it very friendly and make it a place where either if you're new to the cannabis lifestyle or very well versed to know exactly what you want, we just want to make sure it's a friendly atmosphere to come on in and spend as much time with our budtenders as you'd like to.
So other locations, what can we expect from the Botanical Company, Danielle?
We're so excited. We have our vertically integrated facility being built as we speak in Lansing. Such a strong cannabis culture there. That will be our cultivation, processing, and provisioning. That really is our flagship location.
Very exciting.
So November 1st, we hope to have provisioning open there. So we're just over the moon about that.
Yeah.
And then also up in the wonderful town of Kalkaska, such a great cannabis vibe in that town. We love it. We're going to be opening provisioning and then also social use lounge, which is just, we're so excited to be able to come and get your products. They're right next door to each other. You can come and shop and go next door and just check out some music or hang out, and we're over the moon about it.
I can't wait.
Yeah, us too.
Yeah, so I guess we'll have to be making another trip up north to take a look at not only the provisioning center, but also the lounge. And I understand there's going to be some awesome Kalkaska Kush.
Oh, Kalkushka.
Kalkushka.
For our friends at Real Leaf Solutions.
Very nice.
And it is something that you can currently find at Tawas store, and we will be obviously providing that at all of our locations, and it is phenomenal. Try it if you can find some.
So keep your eyes open, folks, and we'll be reporting more with their Lansing location and their Kalkaska location. This is Amanda with the Amanda Report, sponsored by Komorn Law and aired on Planet Green Trees. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective: take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. KomornLaw.com.
Hi, this is retired Sergeant Steve Miller, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
I think we blacked out there for a second. We're back. And
sorry about that. If you
just for a second. Harry, I know we were at they've been chipping away at the caregivers. I agree, and some might even say it's surprising that the caregivers have lasted this long. I think a lot of people thought when they enacted the MMFLA that was the writing was on the wall, and at some point, just by virtue of they had 40, 50,000 caregivers when they enacted that, and they said, nope, we don't want you. We're going to create our own, our own licensed supply market. I do think, I'm kind of curious because in the circle of folks that are here, there are, a lot of activists and been around, since 2008, 9, whatever. And I'm not suggesting you weren't, but I imagine that when you talk about professional, cannabis business, you do have, I think it's going to attract people that may not have the full history of it, right? So they're coming in, and I say, this is kind of how I view a lot of the legislatures. They have no concept of a historical context of, we've been down here before. This is what Bill Schuette used to say, there's a history that the community could what? We got to do this. We got to educate them again. We done our educated. We had 80% voting for medical marijuana by the time it was over. Nobody was opposed to it. You know what I mean? And now we got to do it. There's a commonality of just how crazy it is. But there is a whole population. I've experienced this amongst the lawyers. The cannabis law section. All of a sudden, there's all these new rules and regulations. Lawyers are coming out of the woodwork. They have no idea how we got here. They're just give me some rules and give me some laws so I can start advising my clients how to do blah, 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 blah. And they may not even have a position of how or what it should be, but they just like rules and laws and, vagueness and anything close to vagueness or,
Didn't the safety issue come up at the CLS conference you were at? Didn't they try bringing that up?
Yeah, and that's how. Yeah, and the point of that is the premise of the need for lawyers and more laws and regulations is that it's dangerous.
Right.
And we got to regulate the crap out of it. But
Just point to the danger.
So I listen. I don't know if this is true, and it may not be fed back, but I imagine, the business professionals that are interested, they may have a different perspective. It may be perceived as, and I think this is they're not. If I have to get a license, they should have to get a license.
That's exactly what it's perceived as.
I'm paying taxes, why aren't they, or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But that's not a caregiver, again. That's some other activity that is, and there's remedies. You don't have to amend the whole fucking law to change it. Harry, what do you say? Is that?
I mean, I have a little bit of gossip for you here. Not just the MCMA members want the caregivers gone.
Who else is it then?
Give us the goods.
Other licensees do. I mean, it's not just TA members that want to eliminate the black market. They're just not vocal about it, and they're not members of the MCMA.
Well, okay, that's fine. But let me ask some. First of all, so let me ask you this: do you think they're doing it because there's two reasons why you may do it? Maybe out of If I'm not saying that's true or not, but if it is true, is the reason to feel that way, is it rational and reasonable to feel that way for the reason, the two reasons would be either one, it's immoral or, breaking the law and I'm being judgmental of you, which is one, and or it is actually impacting my bottom line. You know what I mean? There's two different ways. Do you think that feeling from the business owner is, well, first of all, do you think it affects anyone's bottom line? I guess is a better way to. What?
Yes. Let's take the state of California as an example. The black market is outperforming the legal market. The legal market is basically going through a depression. So is it affecting their bottom line? I would say that the obvious answer would be absolutely.
That's because they try to do stuff like this and put more prohibitions on the outside.
I'm not picking sides on either side here, but I'm just pointing out that can it affect their bottom line? Does it affect their bottom line? Absolutely. The price of flower in the legal market is pretty low. The price of flower in the black market is also very low.
However, what is different than the California is this: the state of Michigan reports $110 million a month in sales, which is $2 billion a year in sales. There's not a competing gray market, under market, whatever you want to call it. that's competing against it. And
It's not $2 billion.
They're on pace to do $2 billion this year.
If it's
110 million a month.
Yeah, times 12 isn't 2.
No, it's closer to 100. I think last month was like 165.
Oh wow!
All right, my point is that to suggest that whatever this is, like how much. Okay, so these bills went into effect. You think caregivers packed up and started to leave? You think they're doing their own thing?
Right.
Doesn't matter. There's 65,000 million
and
650,000 more.
Yeah. And they're not going to stop the idea that all this.
But
these bills don't do anything for the black market. These bills just take away existing rights. These bills hurt.
Maybe gray or unregulated would be better.
They don't do anything to resolve the issue of people exceeding limits.
But I'm making the point that it's not impacting the market. I mean, you would think it. I mean, conceptually, it would if it was robust enough. But how can anyone say that if the state's making 165 million a month? I'm just saying, from zero. You know, like the idea that the solution is that they're going to control all of it is rather piggish. You know what I mean?
Of course it is.
No, I'm just saying that the state buys it. The state buys into the idea that they have to have all of that. The premise that they're going to control the cannabis market is the fallacy, right? The cannabis market existed before they had their hooks into it, and it will continue afterwards if they continue to be prohibitive about it.
And they're just recriminalizing people. This is
insane
bullshit, and it literally mimics the drug war overall. Like you're gonna tell me that because this guy grew a plant and then this guy grew a plant because this one had the license and he didn't, that somehow that's a felony. That is insane. And it was the entire reason.
I want to understand, I'd like to know why I can grow tomatoes in my backyard and not one single tomato farmer.
Exactly.
Okay. Not one cucumber farmer gives a fuck. Not one vegetable farmer gives a fuck. So, explain that to me.
That's a good.
Well, the issue.
That's a good perspective.
The issue here, to directly address that point, because it is a great point, is that for me, to grow cucumbers is an awful lot of work, and I'm not very good at it. It's a lot easier for me to go to the supermarket and buy some cucumbers.
Would it bother you if for example, Harry had grown his tomatoes and you're buying his tomatoes as an option at the supermarket as well as whatever Heinz may put on the shelf as well?
I don't care.
But that's the point of this.
It's got to get to that point, and we're not. And the problem is now you have two different playing fields. So you've got one that is upset with the other because the other is able to sell their product for less because their operating cost is not nearly the amount that it is for the licensees. And it's not the caregiver's fault, and it doesn't mean they should be eliminated. What it means is that if we want the licensed market to truly address what they perceive to be a problem as this black market that they're talking about, then the legal market needs to be able to sell at the same rate that the black market does. And the problem goes away. Yeah. So that should be the focus. And just leave people the fuck alone.
But right now, if these bills pass, it would be the smartest thing you could do if you're a caregiver is drop your caregiver status and then just grow black market and fall within the penalties of the
MRTMA.
The MRTMA. MRTMA.
Yep.
I mean, that's if they pass. If I were a caregiver, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
It is strange the way that the MRTMA has, it's intentionally decriminalized, non-felonized, and created penalties for behavior involving marijuana, growing plants more than 12, a lot, misdemeanor punishable by no jail. Possession of a lot of it with the intent to deliver, driving a car. Likewise, civil infraction, 2.5 times the amount, misdemeanor not punishable by jail. Now that's absent habitual commercial willful purpose with violence, whatever. Assuming that's not the case.
But those are a lot of things they have to provide proofs on.
Right. Of course. But I'm saying the statute suggests that civil infraction first, depending on depending on the amount over.
It's all about the amount.
Right. So there's a question that exists, of course, for the delivery with remuneration. If it deliver as much as you want for free, even that act, with as long as there's no money exchange, would not involve, like, 50 pounds, Steve, here you go.
Boom.
No money. Here, just take it. And,
Sure.
that could happen. Like, actually,
Just don't be a caregiver doing that because you're going to get charged with a felony.
what I'm saying is that that act, but what and it's understood. Now they're trying to put the MMA on like felony steroids. Like they're trying to like elevate it to
Supercharged.
Like if you got your card, you create more liability than you would as a non-card. This is psychotic.
And they butchered Section 8.
And let's just be clear about this. Since the MMFLA, the first thing we knew is that they couldn't get the growing together and the caregivers had to save the program. That's the first thing. The second thing, once they got going, they all got into the recreational market, very robust. That's the way, developing the market. The market share is now 80-20-ish, right? And now the number of patients that exist in the state is down from what was 300,000, about 230, 240, okay? And now they want to get rid of the caregivers that are like the other side of the patients, and they want the patients to be forced to come into their shops and buy their medical marijuana, which in 2 years isn't going to be separated because they're going to, unify the licenses. So what you have here is a bunch, like they're they're destroying the caregivers and completely abandoning the patients at the same time. The MMFLA has destroyed the MMA. Is there any other way to say it, Jamie Lowell?
Well, it hasn't happened yet.
Just the fact that that's going on here. And this is the target. And all right, it isn't over yet. I agree.
It's not
It isn't over yet. And Jamie and Zahra are gonna arm wrestle or even cage fight if they have to. I understand to make.
You know what? As I said earlier on in the show, like there's many people working together on this in many different ways. Yeah, we are doing this. Some other groups are getting different meetings and bringing different people to those things and covering different ground with them. And there's been a really good effort. There's room for a lot more. There's this lobby day coming up on November 4th. There's going to be an educational dinner for the lawmakers. If they don't get it out of, they don't move it out of the floor by then, still go down.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff going on, and also and as you just brought up, the largest industry association in the state is actively in opposition. They are contacting their connections in the legislature and telling them they had nothing to do with this, even though it's been kind of inferred by some of the lobbyists in support that they did, and that they opposed it, and that they also agreed that we should be having these discussions with all of the important stakeholders. So we need, again, the good news is it's the super majority. So that does make sense to some people, and not every single politician is transactional. So,
And here is our Jamie, Amanda. For anyone's lobbying efforts and whatnot, is it? Are we still in a time where the tribal politics is still the way? You know what I mean? Is it Democrats voting just because they're Democrats and Republicans voting just? Is that is that like the norm that exists in the Michigan, or is there any bipartisan ship at all, or just from your experience, if you can? And I'm saying that because does that mean that the Republicans are the supporters of these bills? As a matter of fact, that every single one of them is going to vote for it to pass if given the opportunity, both in the House and the Senate. Zahra, what's your thoughts on that?
I think the bill itself is bipartisan, so it does have support from Republican and Democrat. I mean, whether we agree with the Democrat that's sponsoring it or not, for me, I think it's just easier getting across to the Democrats than it is to the Republicans, and from what I've seen. But that doesn't mean all the Republicans are supporting this or know exactly what it is that will happen with this. And I think that's where the education and taking the meetings with them is. But for me personally, it has been easier to get through or have conversation with the Democrats.
Jamie, you mentioned you may have
But
been.
I think
Go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
No, I was saying that that's the thing about cannabis is that both for its opposition and support, it does bring a lot of bipartisan efforts, and brings a lot of people who wouldn't usually be at the table together.
But you know what? I know what you're saying, and I'm a big fan of that as a political unifying topic. It is one that has always transcended traditional political divide. However, we are talking about a new thing now, I think, which is this definition of what tax and regulate means and looks like. So now there's financial interest in regulations and and rules that are going to maybe create a threshold of financing and capital that's needed to continue to operate, or whatever it may be. But the point is that it's no longer being perceived, I think, at the state level at least, as a social justice issue anymore. Like now that it's quote unquote legal, this is about the economy of cannabis and how to politic it. Really, that's what I think we're really up against. This is not about social justice. It's not okay. It's legal now. We tax and regulate. What does tax and regulate look like? Yeah. We're not making. I mean, So anyways, but my question is, Jamie, Zahra sounds like it hasn't had a lot of, I don't know, luck yet or persuasiveness, but maybe even like responses from them. I know you said you were hanging in some libertarian circles. I don't know if they call themselves Republicans or not, but what has been your, because this is, from that, let's talk to their talking points like a Republican. Like this is monopoly stuff. It's not free trade. It's restrictive. It seems like it's targeting certain individuals. It's
libertarians would say butt out. Butt out.
And don't take rights away that belong to others for the sake of other economic advantages.
Out.
Thank you.
Right, that would be another thing. So, Jamie, what has been the response from your lobby efforts in that regard with Republican or libertarians?
Well, I mean, there's this group, and they have had more conversations directly, not necessarily. I've been in some meetings with some of the Republicans in support, but those guys do a lot more. What I understand, I don't know exactly who they are, but there's 3 or 4 Republicans at least that are, I'm sure there's more. I would hope there's more that are solid no's. And, and every single one helps. There are a few Democrats, more than that are in support, that are, either influenced, so to speak, or they are, they were duped into believing that there really is a health concern, or, whatever the strategy is.
Do you really think that? I mean, don't you think another unwritten question is, which is the right play to get the most support for votes?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, or they're going to get, by voting this way and pushing it that way, they're going to get support from a
little something
from the Cannabis Manufacturers Association, guaranteed, big checks for the campaign.
I think I kind of implied that. What I just said.
Yeah.
I said influence, and I went like this.
Okay,
so.
okay, but I'm saying to you that. And they're right. We talked about this. They may know that it's right. They may hear you saying. You may tell them something that is very, very repugnant to their moral code, and then they may smile at you and give you a hug, and then vote the other way tomorrow.
If they're transactional and they've already made the transaction, then yeah, we're not likely to change much. But not everybody's in that situation, and.
Do you hear what do you hear what the legislator said to the caregiver?
Oh boy.
They said, your patient needs 3 grams a day. Just tell him 1 will be okay. Just tell him if 3 was working, just tell him 1 will be okay.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Suck it up.
All right, so
we got to take a quick break.
Okay, that's what we're going to do real quick.
And then we're going to come back and we got to wrap
open
up.
topic. No, the open mic.
Open mic.
Yeah, everyone will get a chance to do a 5-minute bit. Okay,
no, it's too much. But okay, we'll be right back.
3.5.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective. Take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knock out victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need. So I think it's important that we all speak up on what we think about this initiative. But when the voters have their say, their will must stand.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
All right, Planet Green Trees return. Thank you for staying with us. Steve Miller says we have exactly 7 minutes before we have to get
He said 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Well, you can have 7.
But now it's 3.
If you're a good negotiator, I'll give you 7.
It will be 12 plus before it's all over.
You're probably right.
I'm trying to be more.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I'm trying to be more disciplined with my words. But anyway, so
how's that going?
We'll see. We'll see if we can keep it under 7. Okay. All right. So I was going to say something about the list, Jamie. There's a list, of course, that is being used as a boycott. I don't know what kind of impact can be identified in that boycott if the industry's, setting records every month. But what do you think? Is that been deemed a success so far? Do you think, or what? The boycott.
So in some ways, it's had an impact. But no, has it solved any issue? But and it's also kind of probably exceeded its,
life, like it's 8.
Yeah, strong, ability to be as effective as it used to be.
I will say this. Go ahead, keep going, sir.
No, but it did have its time, and it. I mean, I know the company I'm with put out a statement saying we're not buying their products and all that kind of stuff, and but it is still pretty cool, and I think they still could. I'm not saying it right now. They still could do something with it, probably that would help it out. I think there's been maybe some attempts, to do that, but it's still kind of cool to me that a decentralized kind of boycott like that had its time for a while, where it had some momentum, and it did start like freaking some people out. They had people on their shows trying to, talk themselves out of it, or talk their way out of like their participation in this stuff. And, it did some stuff for a while. So we can criticize it now, but it's done some kind of cool stuff. It's shaking some people up.
I don't think it was like something to criticize either. It was effective. Maybe the efforts can then be transferred now that we've got that boycott list, and we've told everybody what not to purchase. Then maybe we can, come up with some kind of list of things
Good
or
products.
people. Yes,
Like Franklin Fields.
Yes, or redemption products or something like that, and letting people know. So that way, that's what they see. Yes, they boycott those other guys. We know that now. Now, what are we going to focus on? Now, what are we going to do?
Here, let me give you my thoughts on that, and I appreciate the optimism from both of you. But I think the reality is, if there's a boycott and the boycott continues and it's not effective, you have to call it a loser. I'm just saying. Because let's be real, and this may be a reason why the legislature feels
the boycott is like throwing out some memes and putting some like names up on that thing.
And who doesn't love a good meme?
Listen,
it hasn't like there still is room for different levels of boycott
and more memes.
If felt necessary.
Fine. But let me say this.
I mean, there's things that don't take place necessarily
There's a
on
lot
social
more.
media.
I think the boycott list kind of motivated some people to start addressing some of these issues.
I understand, and I'm not minimizing it. I'm just making this point that a funny meme may be meaningful to everyone here, but that may not be the measurement by which the decisions are being made. Like the metric by which the decision would be made is this. If this boycott was effective, we would see it in the numbers and sales, etc. But by virtue of it going up and not really changing, it tells us that that boycott doesn't have an impact in the grand total of what the state of Michigan wants, arguably. I'm just making a devil's advocate argument here. But the point being that, if they were able to, draw from something, and identify it, but it seems to me that, those numbers speak for themselves.
The boycott list was a lot more effective, I think, when it was just exclusive to the MCMA members and their affiliate brands. And then I believe, kind of once it expanded beyond that to include people that have done business with some MCMA members, in my opinion, that's kind of when I lost a little bit of credibility, because, I'll use Sensi as an example. They had 2 advertisers out of their 50. I mean, it's a very, very small portion of their overall revenue, and, they get put on the list.
Hey, speaking of that, I haven't seen it yet. 2 of those you just brought up, Harry, it's Flourish and Skymint that are on there amidst all the other advertisers that are on there. And I believe, and I haven't seen it yet, but I heard that Flourish, maybe even today, put out a statement about being in support of caregivers, which I don't know. I haven't verified that it exists. And if we do verify that it exists, if we could verify how genuine it is right away.
Yeah, is it lip service or is it,
But it does mean that here's another example of kind of doing stuff like this, put some pressure on them. I mean, again, I'd like to verify that it's out there, but go ahead. I mean, you brought that up, so it just reminded me of that. But I know that you were making a good point that it gets stretched out to the point where maybe it doesn't really, it's like we're wasting our time worrying about who said that, they like this product one day or something like that.
On the core subject here, which is the MCMA members. 7 that we know.
Or the big money interests that we know, like Pleasantries, for example. They're not with the MCMA, but they've made it clear that they don't mind taking away caregiver rights, and they have not rescinded that position yet. So to me, that would be somebody to be concerned with until they would change that position.
I mean,
same thing, but just a slight variation. I mean, it goes beyond the MCMA. As you said earlier, there's people like that. There's other big money interests.
Yeah, the boycott obviously got Randy and his guys to withdraw their membership and resign from the MCMA. So it was effective in that sense. They were obviously scared to be on that boycott list and did something about it. Whether or not they, they were genuine in their acts. Obviously, there's a varying opinions about that.
No, they weren't. There's no varying opinion about it. I mean, like they said very clearly, we have a video clip of it, that they're okay with taking away caregiver rights.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's not right. You know,
Exterminate all the brutes.
Yeah.
Again, probably framing it wrong, and maybe even if discussed differently, not calling them caregivers, but instead calling them, you know, what illicit market, but not caregiver, right? Because there's a difference of what we're talking about. And you know, it doesn't justify the removal of any of the rights and whatnot. But
it doesn't solve the problem.
But here you go.
Just hurts things.
No, I understand. My final point, though, is if you were standing back from 30,000 feet and saw that this organization, in broad daylight, introducced bills that were going to destroy the MMA, and they're doing it in broad daylight.
And why do they got to touch Section 8?
For reasons that everybody knows that is, you know, totally driven by, right? And then a boycott starts, and the people that are looking at it from 30,000 feet are weighing the evidence that's being drawn from this, you know, social experiment of a group of perceived cannabis community is boycotting these, and they're looking at the measurements of things to evaluate that's going to help them decide who's right, the boycotters or the boycottees, right? So what they, you know, I'm saying a good meme, and an insult
Everyone
like
loves
that,
a good
a
meme.
big business versus little guy kind of thing may appeal, but I'm saying to the numbers of what impact this group of people has on that just by virtue of the sales growth. There may be 20 other reasons why it happened. It had made nothing to do with the boycott or because of the boycott, but I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like if that's the one thing you're looking at, it doesn't seem to be having an impact, and I worry that failure doesn't empower them to say, you know what, it didn't have an impact. The business got better. No, obviously, they're not enough people to impact or move enough people to not buy at these stores.
I don't think anybody would assume that it would have like that. I mean, again, this is a very small, decentralized operation of throwing a few things out there. I mean, there's different levels of boycott that have not gone down. So I mean, I don't think that anything's hinged upon whether or not this was successful in any way. I mean, it's annoying, but I don't think it's like a bearing on anything.
I got kind of on a roll there. It was overemphasized my point, but I'm not even to knock the book. It's a good idea, but I just worried that, you know, there's this. It's almost like a collateral consequence of it not impacting. It gives a measurement to a certain degree. You know what I mean? I think, and I don't know if these are even thinking about this. You know what I mean? But I just the people that are in charge. I don't know if that's a thought, but
we don't know if the sales would have been $10 or $20 million more without the boycott, right?
That's true. That's true. That's true. You're right. That's a good point. And but I mean, there would certainly be a way to tell that it. I don't know. Maybe you're right. I mean, I guess. But I mean, you know,
interesting data.
Yeah, you can't really measure it. You know, it's hard to measure.
Well, if you think about like a country that's got a boycott or something like that, they get cut off from the world and they start starving and things like that. Like that's a. You know what I'm saying? There's some way
a little different.
Well, but I'm saying that's
the
there's
risk here was brand damage, and it was significant enough that people were trying very hard to get off the list. So clearly,
yes, I agree with that.
It was having some negative impact on them.
I agree.
And it'll continue. I mean, who wants their name associated with that?
Maybe it could have helped them. Who knows? You know, like could have helped some of these MCMA members.
Maybe.
They do have a saying that any press is good press, right?
Yeah. I mean, we don't know.
You know, I also worry that the other thing is that in the way that this is being framed and making caregivers criminals instead of even framing the discussion about things that are not caregiving, but what are illicit, and there's already crimes that exist out there.
Felonies.
It creates this, this public safety shit issue that is very political at, in the executive branch and the Attorney General's office. And I think you might, if MSP, who's probably supporting all these bills,
this was always their master plan.
All right, but I'm saying the law enforcement, rock them, get regulated, these not fair tax violators, blah, blah, blah. You could just see that being a charge of a campaign slogan.
Yeah.
That may, I don't know. It's a question of it's like a I don't even know what it's like a populist kind of group versus a corporate group fight. You know what I mean? It's not good.
Well, I think it's more than that, and I think that it's why it's so dangerous, because the state of Michigan, like it or not, has a stake in this fight. And, like you just said, I mean, the MSP has been wanting to get rid of caregivers for forever.
There should be a law against the cops being at the political table. Should be a law against. They shouldn't have a spot. They are the servants of the people at the direction of the politicians, and they should have no say.
Here you go.
Zero.
I get my final word here. You know how I say I like lawyers? The world needs more good lawyers. There's rules that are lawyers to live by, and if everybody had some of these things, the world would be a better place. You got to show up when you're supposed to. You got to be responsible and make sure there's a communication open. You're not not like breaking down the communication. And I say, like, the law practice is bigger. The practice of law is bigger than any one individual. I say the same thing about the great game of golf that God gave us, which is you call violations on yourself. You're penalizing yourself because the game is bigger than you. Jay, am I right?
Amen.
All right. And when I turn to cannabis and think about like how this government is just trying to take over and meld it into something that it's not, the plant is bigger than government. And unfortunately, all this shit, they'll never be able to control it this way. They are trying to utilize a concept of prohibition and taking away permitted behavior, despite the fact that the whole reason the state of Michigan passed the MRTMA was to attempt to end the war, the prohibition, because it doesn't work, the war on drugs. So it is, it's really not something to, I think there's, I don't know, we haven't gone anywhere we can discuss how we're going to adjust to that, but it is a ridiculous time in the context of, the last 12, 15 years here. All right, any final thoughts? Amanda.
No final thoughts other than looking forward to the next week and seeing how these how these boycotts and bills and everything progress or don't. And I'm sure that there's going to be some updates from Zahra's group regarding when is that educational dinner?
November, it's Tuesday, November 9th, I believe. So there's a chance the bills could be heard by then, but it's coming up soon. Hopefully, there's people RSVPing. It's good. There's some really good people lined up to give presentations. We've become aware of a lot of where the voids are in information and where the misinformation is, and believe that we'll be able to address a lot of that. With everybody who comes there wanting to learn about this, and we have a chance, and people can still help out. There's also the lobby day, minormal.org /no changes.
For the love of God, listen to me, you two, please. For the love of God, please undo this shit with the Section 8 affirmative defense. For the sake of,
oh my
just
God.
for the sake of,
no, the whole scrap that entire project. There's so much in there to have to peel back in order to fix that thing that goes beyond anything that they would be willing to do. This whole process has been unfair so far. The MCMA, the big money interests, have written this language. That's why it's like that. Nobody had a seat at the table that understands this stuff. In a way that
it's too sinister.
It is.
To deconstruct the Section 8 like they are and make it a card thing. That came from some. I'm telling you,
making the oil.
No. But the idea of the ability to prevail on a Section 8 and make a case that it's for medical use would essentially at least allow a fight back, right? And it may even be a reason not to prosecute. But when you cut the entire defense, it's it goes beyond money and goes beyond politics. It's now evil in conviction. And I mean conviction.
It totally guts the intent of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. And what it does is, if you read this latest amendment, and it was like this before outside of this, the one patient versus 5, it's clear what the message is. And that is, we want to put people in jail for marijuana. All you have to do is read Section 8 to see that.
Well, as someone who has prevailed in a lot of Section 8 affirmative defenses, it has always been the anchor of any defense regarding marijuana. It's the anchor. Like, you may have other issues that you get out of the case for, but it's the anchor, because at some point, the presentation of that case, no matter what the narrative is told by the police, because it's usually trafficking and drugs and evil, once the patients start telling their story and they walk through their journey as a patient and how they need the caregiver to provide and the resources they've played, not just, for cannabis, but all other things, finding the right. It's a situation and narrative that can't really be rebutted. It's just not, because there's no knowledge or explanation for it. So the taking this away, because there was many situations where the quantity of marijuana that was necessary to treat the patient's condition continuously.
Not anymore. Not unless you're registered. Then, if you're registered, maybe we'll let you do it.
The whole point of it's crazy.
Well, it was written continuous, uninterrupted supply.
But the idea of what's taking place and having to go as long as we did with the case law interpretation, I could think of year after year, maybe 3 years total, cases stayed for Supreme Court to rule on stuff. You know what I mean? That resulted in nailing down the MMMA's affirmative defense unequivocally and with the stroke of a pen. With no concept of, other than just to be cynical.
Mean.
Do we go over our 7 minutes? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Steve?
Yeah,
Okay.
you won.
All right.
You're,
Harry, final words. I'm sorry for making you listen to my rants and stuff, but...
I think, obviously money's behind all this. You've got a legal system. And the unique thing about the cannabis industry is that there's really no other industry that has, an unregulated, as big of an unregulated market as this industry. And that's, I'm pretty sure that's one of the major reasons why, they're trying to crack down. So even if they did, I don't know that it would really make a big difference. If they won and they got their 24 plant, they got, it all went through, instead of growing 72 plants that produce an ounce, you can grow 24 plants that produce 4 ounces. So there's ways to pivot.
Sure.
Potentially. But obviously there's a lot of other bullshit that's in there where you have to register your house and you have to get your inspections and you have to do all this. That's all bullshit. But, that's, we have to kind of look at everything from a 30,000 foot view is, why are they harassing everybody? Why are they trying to, rattle everybody's cage here? It's because of the size of the unregulated market, but it hasn't done, it hasn't had, the sky hasn't fallen because of it, so again, no changes.
You make a really good point, and which is that, and first of all, calling it an unregulated market, Jamie, is really how they should be calling it. It's not caregivers. It's an unregulated market.
I know people that would claim, and rightfully so, that it is
If they did
regulated.
that, then they wouldn't be successful doing what they're trying to do.
I know that, but
the caregivers are an easy target, so they're trying to get rid of them.
But the business sense that makes it more justifiable, from a straight business, is that, there's a regulated market. And furthermore, the MRTMA that everybody voted for says that the law is intended to create, to legalize marijuana for adults over the age of 21 and to create a regulated market and prevent the illicit market from blah, 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 right? Or to prevent the illicit market. So everyone voted for that in some way. And Harry's point is, just from an objective, I don't care what industry it is. If you have, people that are being regulated and there's, unregulated market that's existing and competing, and that's the complaint here. And Jamie, we said before there may be maybe because there's a larger interest from a bigger financial market that can come in here and they won't get involved, and we won't see Goldman Sachs and Wall Street coming in here unless they close down the unregulated market. It's just not appealing to the investors, and if they can handle that, then the investment portfolios, and the access is just going to be insane. That may be a whole thing that they're contemplating, But again, I go back to the idea that the idea that you're going to be able to control the economy of cannabis is a failure.
Yeah, give it
because it didn't work before.
It's not going to work now either.
There's a better way to do it.
Yeah, it's called figure out with the state how you make the regulated system able to compete with the black market.
No, I think you make it less restrictive to get into the licensed market.
That's what I'm saying. Is like you've got to figure out a way to structure it so that it goes beyond that. I mean, the federal government needs to butt out. 280E is bullshit. And if you do all of that and these people can be competitive, then the problem it goes back to the cucumber analogy. Like, I don't grow cucumbers. Why? Because it's easier for me to go to the store, and ultimately, after I try to grow some cucumbers, it's going to cost me more than if I just go to the store and buy them. That's why. And once that's true about cannabis, then the other issues go away. And who gives a shit? I mean, it's a plant. I mean, really, if people want to grow cannabis and sell it, whatever. Like, it's ridiculous.
I agree. Is that a wrap?
That's a
wrap. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We're going to have to do it again soon. Zahra, good luck with your lobbying. Harry, thanks for hanging in. Amanda, good to see you. Jamie?
Yeah, nice seeing you all.
Keep us updated, please.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys next week.
See
you guys.
Zahra.
Shut it down, Tommy.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective. Take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Hi, I'm attorney Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLC, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Before you plead, call me, attorney Michael Komorn.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.